Have you ever heard of a family of Jewish refugees who fled persecution, found safety in India, and within just a few years were being called the Rothschilds of the East? This family, the Sassoons, became famous for donating huge sums of money, building schools, hospitals, you name it. But behind all this charity, the real source of their wealth came from destroying millions of lives. And it's no surprise that their biggest supporter was the British Empire. So, buckle in, because today we're diving deep into the story of the Sassoon family and their dark empire. Modern-day Mumbai is one of the richest cities in South Asia, with a GDP over $300 billion. It's India's financial and entertainment hub. But if you dig into the history of this mega city, one name keeps popping up: Sassoon. They were a Jewish family who fled persecution in 19th century Baghdad and moved to what was then called Bombay, a British colonial port. The Sassoons lost a lot when they migrated, but they still had their global connections, business experience, and a keen eye for opportunity. They quickly saw that Bombay was set to become a major trade hub. So, they invested heavily in cotton mills, and soon, their business became the engine of Bombay's prosperity well into the 20th century. The districts that once hosted their mills are now the center of India's new billionaire class, packed with luxury towers and malls. The Sassoons were also huge philanthropists. They gifted the city with schools, hospitals, synagogues, and libraries, many of which still serve Mumbai today. In a way, they shaped the city's economy, its culture, and its civic life. But behind all this generosity was a desperate need to whitewash their money, because the biggest source of income for the Sassoons wasn't textiles or real estate. It was drugs. The Sassoon family made their fortune smuggling opium into China. At the time, opium was the world's most valuable drug. British India cultivated it on a vast scale, and the Sassoons came to dominate that trade. By some estimates, this single family controlled 70% of the world's opium supply. Considering opium made up roughly 14% of Britain's total income from India, you can imagine how immensely rich the Sassoons became. Profits from this trade fueled their entire empire and financed their investments in Bombay. Their wealth was so vast that the British even inducted them into their own nobility. Think about that. A family from the Middle East was given a status equal to the British elite in what was a deeply racist empire. That's just how powerful they were. The dynasty's story begins in the late 1820s with David Sassoon. He was the family's founding father who had to flee Baghdad for his life. His own father had been the chief treasurer for Baghdad's government, which made the family influential but also vulnerable. When a greedy governor turned hostile, David was threatened and even held hostage. Fearing for his safety, he escaped to Iran before seeking greater stability in British India. But there was a darker side to this. The British administration welcomed Jewish minorities to work in trade because their small numbers meant they posed no threat, even if they became rich. Some even claim a British agent specifically encouraged the Sassoons to settle in India. David's timing was perfect. Bombay was emerging as the commercial jewel of Western India, built on cotton and opium. David didn't arrive empty-handed. He brought his father's vast network of merchant contacts, giving him access to markets and capital at a time when connections were everything. From the moment he arrived, David aligned himself with British imperial interests. His loyalty earned him trust and protection, and he cleverly built his businesses in new markets created by British expansion. His family's biggest windfall, though, came from opening China's massive market to opium. Now, why was demand so high? Quick recap. The British craved Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain, but China had no interest in British goods. The Chinese demanded payment in silver, which was draining Britain's treasury. To fix this, Britain flooded China with opium grown in India. Opium is a highly addictive drug, and Chinese consumers would pay for it in silver. This reversed the trade deficit and extended Britain's influence. The Sassoons took full advantage. In 1836 alone, Their company shipped over 30,000 chests of opium to China, each weighing around 120 pounds. This flood of narcotics created widespread addiction along China's coast. Millions of lives were ruined, but the Sassoons were becoming fabulously wealthy and influential. In Bombay, David Sassoon became a household name. His family's philanthropy earned them immense prestige. Ordinary people didn't question where the money came from. They just saw new schools, docks, libraries, and hospitals. This earned the family respect and admiration. Later generations even received honors directly from the Viceroy, the highest-ranking British official in India. They even got Bombay's tramways to issue special Sabbath passes so Jewish passengers could avoid handling money on Saturdays. That's how much influence they had. The Sassoons' fame wasn't limited to India. In 1853, David Sassoon was granted British citizenship, a rare honor that marked his family's entry into the inner circles of the empire. Later generations used their opium fortunes to buy stately homes across England, moving in elite circles and cultivating ties with the royal family. Remember the Rothschilds of the East nickname? Well, they actually started mingling with the real Rothschilds. One of David's grandsons even married a Rothschild daughter, cementing a tie between two dynasties central to the British Empire. But this climb into British society created an identity crisis. Many descendants became embarrassed by their origins, feeling ashamed when relatives from India would visit. Despite their titles, they couldn't escape the tension between their Eastern roots and their white aspirations. Their fortune was about to reach new heights. Britain's victory in the Opium Wars against China opened the floodgates for Indian opium. The Sassoon Company's trade soared. The wealth propelled them into even higher circles. David's son, Albert, took over the family business and in 1873 became the first Jewish person ever to be awarded the honorary freedom of the City of London. Not even a Rothschild had received that honor by then. It showed just how important the Sassoon name had become. To their credit, they were savvy enough to diversify, investing in property, insurance, and banking. This allowed them to survive financial crises. They put money into an American railway syndicate, Hungary's national debt, and real estate across Europe. But this global enterprise was just a respectable front for their core business, drugs. Their fortune was still tied to the Indian opium trade, which continued well into the 1920s. They even adapted to new technology, using the telegraph to manage transactions across continents and vertically integrating their empire by buying steamships and creating their own insurance firms. Even as moral outrage against opium grew, the Sassoons didn't care. Albert Sassoon even commissioned a family crest that proudly featured a poppy flower, the source of opium. For them, it was just business, and they were proud of it. But the empire wasn't to last forever. The next generation began to quarrel over money. The family business split into two bitter rivals, the original David Sassoon and Co., and a new breakaway venture, E.D. Sassoon and Co. Both competed in the opium trade, undercutting each other and eroding the family's dominance. The next generation had another problem, a lack of interest. The London branch of the family saw the business as a fountain of wealth to fund their lavish lifestyles, not something to actually run. Some descendants even came to despise the source of their fortune, mocking it as money made in the East by dirty trading. By 1939, the family's direct involvement in David Sassoon and Co. had ended. Meanwhile, the other company, led by Victor Sassoon, went on a different path. Victor made a bold choice to relocate to Shanghai. He sold off the company's Indian assets, fearing the rise of the Indian National Congress. In Shanghai, his gamble initially paid off. By the mid-1930s, Fortune magazine called him Shanghai's #1 realtor, with properties worth over $1 billion today. This move also had an unexpected humanitarian impact. By 1939, Shanghai became a rare refuge for Jewish people fleeing Nazi persecution. Over 20,000 refugees arrived and were welcomed by the city's established Baghdadi Jewish community, of which Victor Sassoon was the leader. But these were the final glory years. After World War II, China's new government brought sweeping nationalization. The Sassoon Empire in Shanghai was seized, with assets worth over $1 billion lost overnight. Victor's bold relocation proved to be his greatest mistake. The fall of Shanghai marked the end of the Sassoon business as a global force. Officially, their empire was over. Unofficially, some claim the Sassoons never really disappeared. They just got better at hiding their fortunes. Their story is a stark reminder that money can hide all sins. A family of exiles became the Rothschilds of the East by capitalizing on imperialist wars and building an empire from a drug that destroyed millions. In the end, it was their own internal conflicts that brought their empire crumbling down, leaving them to fade into obscurity. Some say that's exactly what they wanted, because fortunes like theirs rarely disappear. They just dissolve and reappear under different names. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps out. I'll see you next time.